Y'all would expand a little bit on your ideas of an inheritance and the positive and negative influences that can have on your heirs, and what you might be able to do as a business person and an investor and as a parent to sort of mitigate those negative influences.
If you're quite rich, probably the idea of leaving your children enough so they can do anything but not enough so they can do nothing is not a bad formula. I think if you're talking about people that aren't quite rich, I see, socially I wouldn't have a system that involved inheritances, but recognizing the situation that exists, I think probably at lower levels that leaving to the children in this society is perfectly okay. But I believe enough in a meritocracy that if I were devising the system with a consumption tax and everything, I would probably make inheritance a form of consumption, and it would be very heavily taxed, because I don't believe that because you happen to come out of the right womb, essentially, that you are entitled to live an entirely different life than somebody who wasn't quite as lucky in terms of womb selection. But in my own case, I follow the enough so they can do anything, but not enough so they can do nothing. I was very lucky. I was wired the right way at the right time in history to do very well in this kind of a market economy where, as Bill Gates has told me, if I was born some thousands of years ago, I'd been some animal's lunch. I don't run very fast, and there are different assets that are useful at different times. I'm not wired to play championship bridge or championship chess, or I'm not wired to be a basketball star or anything. It just so happens I'm in an area where it pays off like crazy to be good at capital allocation, and that doesn't make me a more worthwhile human being than anybody else or anything. It just means I was lucky.
I'm an estate planning lawyer. The baby boomer generation is about to pass along the greatest transfer of wealth in history. I can design plans that eliminate estate tax and pass down great amounts of wealth to the next generation. But many of my clients come to me and say they want a plan like Warren Buffett's, leaving their kids enough so they can do anything, but not so much that they can do nothing. Now they ask me, and I'm asking you, how much is that? And how do you keep from ruining your kids?
Yeah. Well, I think more kids are ruined by the behavior of their parents than by the amount of the inheritance. Your children are learning about the world through you, and more through your actions than through your words, from the moment they're born. You're their natural teacher. I don't actually think that the amount of money that a rich person leaves to their children is the determining factor at all in terms of how those children turn out. But I think that the atmosphere and what they see about them and how their parents behave is enormously important. I think that your children are going to read the will someday. That's assuming you're a wealthy person. Your children are going to read the will someday. It's crazy to have them read it after you're dead for the first time. I mean, you're not in a position to answer questions then unless the Ouija board really works or something of the sort. And so if they're going to have questions about how to carry out your wishes or why you did this or that, why leave them endlessly wondering after you die? So in my own case, I rewrite a will every 5 or 6 years or something like that, and I have them read it. They're the executors under it. They should understand how to carry out their obligations that are embodied in the will, and they should also, if they feel there's anything unfair about it, they should express themselves before I sign that will, and we should talk it over, and we should figure out whether they're right or I'm right or someplace in between. So I do think it's think it's very important in wealthy families. Once the kids are of a certain age, I mean, I don't advise doing this with your 14-year-old or something, but when they get, certainly by the time they're in the mid-30s or thereabouts, I think they should be participants in the will, and I do think that if you get to be very wealthy, that the idea of trying to pass on, create a dynasty of sorts, it just sort of runs against the grain as far as I'm concerned. And the money has far more utility. The last hundreds of millions or billions have far more utility to society than they would have to create a situation where your kids don't have to do anything in life except call a trust officer once a year and tell them how much money they want. Charlie?
I'm absolutely sure you don't want to discuss your will with your children if you're going to treat them unequally.
No.
That is poison.